hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Husky Hockey Podcast, your all things St. Cloud State Husky hockey related. I'm Weldie, sitting with Andrew, and I don't know about you, Andrew, but I cannot believe that the season's already upon us. It kind of snuck up on me, not gonna lie.
Same here, but
You were all in on Twins losing. You were relishing in that, and so far on your thoughts on the collapse. That must have been brought a smile to your face.
It did, yeah. I don't know if we've discussed the bit on the air, but I've kind of become what I've referred to as an anti-Twins fan over the last few years. And I still watch the games. I just kind of root for whoever they're playing. Not a fan of this front office field staff. But I didn't expect it to come so quickly, I guess, the collapse. First place.
Yeah, it hit hard.
Out. First place at 12 games out in something like 20 days. I'll take it.
That's almost impressive, really, when you think about it. So, yeah, it was, I was talking to my wife just a couple of days ago, too, and I was like, I cannot believe, we're already talking about the red-white scrimmage. We had the exhibition game for the women's hockey team that won 5-1. So it's, all of a sudden it's like, wow, okay, we're going to get in hockey. I gotta get pumped up. And, once I saw the new scoreboard, that looks nice. And, started reading about the team, reading about, kind of my thoughts on the conference or reading about other people's thoughts on the conference to formulate my opinions here. And now I'm getting hyped. Now I'm ready for the season to kind of get rolling.
Yeah, same. And I think I'll be able to. Yeah, it'll take like a week or two to like fully adjust the hockey season. But once it starts, we're in. It's going to be weird because you have that first week with St. Thomas, and then you have the off week right after that.
And the off, yeah.
But yeah, come Wisconsin, that series, and from that point forward, I'll be all in, and that's a good thing.
Yep, exactly. So, why don't we just hop right into it? We'll have our NCHC predictions a little bit later in the show, but here, we might as well talk a little bit about it. We talked a little bit about the scrimmage. First thing that's on mine, I didn't go to it, so I didn't see anything. Obviously, I heard some rumblings about the goalies and whatnot, but nothing major. But only one even strength goal was scored, and in 25 minutes of play, which again is just kind of my worry for this team. We talked about how deep we are defensively, and the offense, only one goal being scored is a little bit worrisome.
But you're bearing the lead because the Huskies won, and that's what.
Hey,
it's all
there we
about.
go.
That's what it's all about.
The real winners are the friends we made along the way, I think, actually. So it's, maybe that's a good sign of the goaltending too. Miettinen was the goal scorer. So, I mean, that's a plus, considering the down year that he had last year. So it's.
Yeah, I'm not gonna look too much into an inter squad scrimmage as far as taking any big takeaways from that. But yeah, I mean, last year I think too, even strike scoring was a struggle for this team at times. The power play has been relatively reliable for the Huskies over the years, but last year that scoring depth and then even strength scoring was at times kind of dried up. So we'll see if St. Thomas is a good cure for that. They last year came charging out of the gates against the Tommies, and maybe that's what they need this year as well. We'll see, but I'm not really going to take too many takeaways from that scrimmage. But maybe Miettinen, maybe that's the takeaway, and maybe he's back. We've kind of given him some criticism over the last year but I don't think it's
Rightfully
out of
so.
the necessary. Well, right. Yeah.
Right.
I'm not saying that. Yeah, absolutely. But
I
at the same
read
time,
all these previews about him like leading the team in shots, and I'm like, yeah, they were from 30 feet away. It's like he didn't get into any prime scoring areas, and wondering why he was in a slump. It was pretty obvious why.
Right, and I think he's sort of fallen off on the depth chart of our expectations. I mean, he's that line that he's on with Crandall and Okabe, according to McHatton, that's the number one line. Again, put that in quotes if you'd like, because there really is no top line when it comes to the Huskies over the years. But I think there's a good chance that he has a bounce back year, and
I do.
And I'm skeptical about it, but I don't think it's out of the ordinary. And he's a year older, and he had that sophomore slump, which that's a kind of a fork in the road for some guys. Some guys can use that as motivation to turn things around, and maybe I'm
or just end up like
that.
Dave Spehar.
That's right. We could Spehar it, or we could spearhead it. I don't think that makes sense, but we'll take it.
If you say it with conviction, I think anything can make sense.
That's the title of the podcast. Spearharing it or spearheading it.
I actually totally forgot until you brought it up that we've got this weekend against St. Thomas and then an off week. God, that's dumb. But
I agree.
Yeah, we don't see a conference foe until November. When we go out to Denver.
When St. Cloud goes out to Denver, and when I go out to Denver, big announcement. I'm going on the road. We'll be at Magnus Arena. Yeah, not my favorite road venue. I'd probably prefer to go to CC, but schedule-wise, Denver worked better for me this year. So
the traveling fan is back.
No, it'd probably be the only time this year, and if I make it back to Minnesota sometime, which I might, but this will be the only road series for the Huskies that I'll be making. But I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully by that time we'll have taken care of that non-conference schedule as much as they can.
Yeah, I went out to Denver for a road trip, many years ago, and I mean, other than me having some stories about that road trip that maybe I shouldn't talk about on the podcast, but it's a weird arena. I don't know. I went in the height of the Tim Tebow craze, so I Tebowed right in front of Magnus. Huskies won 3-0 that Friday game, so I think so. If you got a Tebow right in front of it, I think actually that brings good luck if you want to do that.
Yeah, I've only been there once as well, and did not see a Husky win. So hopefully that'll change this time around. I like Denver's okay. It's not like I hate Denver. That area where the arena is at is a little strange. It's a little bit further off of downtown. It's not in a great area as far as there's not a ton of options around there. It's a college area of town, so imagine what you will about that. But I'm just like I said, I'd rather go to CC, especially because they have their new arena that I haven't seen yet.
Yeah, exactly.
But it
was just like looking at the outside. It was just there's just nothing special. There's nothing eye catching about Magnus.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The darkness.
Yeah.
Dark corner. Yeah, it's a little weird, but I'm looking forward to that. That's it's 5 weeks, so that'll sneak up pretty quick. But looking forward to that.
Sure thing. So let's talk. First off, St. Thomas, coming off their debut season last season, and that was a good sentence. Their debut season last season. That's why you listen to this podcast,
right?
But 3 wins. Pop quiz. Do you remember? Would you guess the 3 teams that they beat?
I know they beat Ferris F and State. I think that was their first win. Maybe they beat them twice, actually. I'm going to say them.
I will say, yes, that is correct. They beat Ferris twice.
So we're just looking for one more here.
So one more.
Was it Bowling Green?
Lake Superior State.
Okay, and I at least one of those was overtime, correct? I wonder how many of those were regulation wins.
Nope, they were all regulation.
They were all regulation wins. So they swept Ferris,
I mean,
or did they play
No.
2 series? They play a
they
series
paid
out
2
there,
series, yeah.
and then that Lake State game was at home for them, for St. Thomas.
Yes, it was.
So one road win, 2
Mhm.
home wins.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a struggle.
But I
last
remember
year.
that, I was, first round of the CCHA playoffs. They played Mankato, and it was a nail biter there, where Mankato ended up winning 3-2. But
And that last goal set up by a bad non-call. Just ask Rico
Yep.
about that one.
yeah, it was 2-1 St. Thomas going into the third. So.
And that was the weekend that I said it's going to be like a 15-goal margin of victory for Mankato in the 2 games. I think they beat them like 8-1 the second. So I was half
8-2. Yeah.
8-2. But that first game was they had to sweat a little bit for that one.
But I mean, the first, last series against St. Cloud State, their debut series was a 12-2 loss, and then the next night it was 2-0. And the Huskies, I remember watching that, just kind of thinking, what the heck is going on? That we weren't able to really generate a lot of prime scoring chances. I should say we peppered a lot of shots, but not really getting into the good areas, which ended up being a routine or kind of a common theme throughout the rest of the season.
And that was at the X, if you
Correct.
remember. So this time they are playing at St. Thomas's home rink in Mendota Heights. So first time in that building for them, for what that's worth.
And it's a Saturday-Sunday series.
Yes, and a Sunday afternoon game, which I'm not a huge fan of. But 2 or 4.
They got
2.
classes. They got classes to get to.
I suppose. It's just those. Maybe they're doing it like Motzko would say, like, we want to play a weird time to get us ready for the playoffs, or get us ready for the NCAAs. Maybe that's the rationale here.
Maybe that's
the
rationale.
Second game of the year. We need to get used to those weird start times.
You never know when you're going to have a 4:00 start time, so you might as well get used to that now. What your routine would be, 4:00 Sunday. So, well, I mean, to be fair, the Vikings play at 8 a.m., 8:30 a.m. Central Time, because they're in London against the Saints. So maybe it's, you wake up, you have cakes and eggs, and then you drink throughout the game, you pass out for a little bit, you wake up again, you rally, and then you're back, you're at the X. Or I'm sorry, you're at the Herb.
That's right. If someone is going to do that, let us know how that goes.
If someone was going to do that, it's me in college. I would have completely done that. Granted, I would have gotten about 3 bars that are now defunct in St. Cloud. So,
imagine if the Twins were still in it too, because I think they play a game that day too. So you could do Vikings in the morning and then Twins in the afternoon. Although no one except me really cares about Twins.
Probably all.
I'm still watching because I picked 77 and 85 at the beginning of the year, and I want them to hit that right on the nose. And it's still in play. They need to go 3-6 in order to reach that, which would be pretty good.
That's a little optimistic.
Yeah, that's right. It might be overshooting rather than undershooting. But yeah,
Rocco's got to go.
I remember that last year it was again the first series of the year, even first series for St. Thomas as a D1 program, and they were kind of just a black box. We didn't really know exactly what to expect with them. They'd never fielded a team at the D1 level before, and their team was comprised of guys that had been with them as the free team. A few of those, majority of it was transfers, guys that failing to get, and no real blue chip guys failing to ice elsewhere, including Trevor Zins, former Husky, probably arguably had the best season last as point man on defense. And not that we were scared necessarily of St. Thomas, just like an unknown, and then when you win the 12-2 game, you're kind of like, okay, suck. The 2-0 game,
7 for 10 on the power play. If you
7
remember.
for 10. That's right. And that early season power play success, like basically stayed with them through the rest of the year. I mean, that power play figure, which I think was right around 30% all year. I remember having to remind people, like, this was a little tainted by the St. Thomas game, or at least like skewed a little bit. Not that they don't count, but
yeah,
this was barely a D1 team.
Well, true, and I agree with that, except that just the other caveat is that even without those, if you take away all of those power plays and all those chances, I mean, you go down a couple of percents. So really, it was still a potent power play.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't want to discount that too much. But they were a very bad team, St. Thomas was last year, and I mean, they were 60th in pairwise, 59th, whatever it was. How many teams there were last year? Dead last, and I mean,
I don't even know how many teams are in college hockey anymore.
Well, now there's a couple more. I was gonna say they can't be.
Is Lindenwood start? No, Lindenwood's not starting yet.
Yes,
so they did start. Okay,
they're playing.
Augustana is next.
Augustana will be next year. This year,
Long Island is in. Stonehill is not in.
I was looking at Stonehill. They got a couple of games scheduled this year against like Long Island and a couple like CHN only has like 5 games listed as a schedule, but they are D1 teams that they're playing. I don't know what the deal is with them, but Alaska Anchorage is back for sure. And
that's right.
Lindenwood
is back.
Lindenwood is good. They're playing the Gophers like next weekend. That's their first.
Is Wisconsin still a D1 team?
Yeah, we saved that joke for when we play them in a couple of weeks.
That's right.
4th place in the
of
Big
course
Ten
they were. God, of course they were. Just a joke.
Surprised that they weren't rated in the USCHO poll, which we might get to later.
We might get to that.
Stick with us. I was gonna say there's no way that St. Thomas can be any worse than they were last year, but considering we have a couple of new teams and more, there'll be a couple of more programs playing this year. I guess they could technically slip in the pairwise, but yeah, this still is not a good team. Huskies need to win both games, full stop. Yeah. But it still is, I don't know. You like to play. I mean, you could treat the team exhibition games from perspective. Say, yeah, I feel like I'm disrespecting St. Thomas, but hey, they are the Tommies. I don't have a ton of sympathy. I think they're going to do fine for themselves in the long run. But and some turnover from last year to this year as well. I don't know who is going to play goal for them. Last year they had Peter Tomey, the UND, who bore the brunt of a terrible team in front of him. But he's no longer there. They have 3 guys on the roster listed. None of them have one college experience. I mean, none up here to the game so far. One guy, previous team was an NA3 team. It's like the 3rd tier juniors. You generally don't see those guys making D1 rosters. So I don't know who is going to be a net for them. And so, I mean, I expect the Huskies to take care of business here. And if they don't, we're going to have something to talk about.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have something to talk about.
But you still gotta. I mean, it's like what we're looking for here. You cover it with that scrimmage kind of deal. Is how's the even strength? I have confidence that this team can put power play goals on the board against St. Thomas. Just using past history in this matchup. But playing in a full, and I'm curious and excited. I'm excited to see who the Huskies are putting in net. I haven't heard anything yet. I'm not sure if you have, if they've made that announcement. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 2 different starters. I wouldn't be surprised if all 3 guys get action. Like if that Sunday game gets out of hand, like it did last year. Wouldn't be shocked to see James Gray make his debut right away for the Huskies, like in relief. I'm not sure who's going to start in net, and I'm curious to see how that plays out. And just, yeah, I'm excited to see the new guys that we mentioned last week or last podcast. Not only the freshmen coming in, but we've got the transfers in Crookshank, who was playing center, in that scrimmage as expected. And I did see that Adam Ingram was playing center, was centering a line. I can't remember with who. I know McHatton listed the line combos that they used in the scrimmage on his recap on the Rink Live, so you can check that out. Ingram himself is another kind of, I'm very excited to see him for the first time this weekend. And so there's going to be plenty of storylines and players and units that I'm going to be on the lookout for and excited to see how that plays out. I'm excited to see, it's like good to see Brett again, and the coaching staff. Maybe Brett's like got some more facial hair or something this time around, or maybe he's changing up the suit and tie look. If he's gonna go like Motzko, Mike Eve style and do like the sweater vest look, who knows? Got to check that out as well. But like I said, no shortage of storylines. What are you looking for?
Sweater vest. Oh, sweater vest reference. It's Ingram was centering between Molinar and Chase Brand.
That's right. I was interested to see that those pairings with him or those players.
Yeah, and obviously I can't talk about Jack Rogers, Ingram, Grant Deshawn, Ethan Alcone, Ryan Roseborough. I always say Riseborough.
I've said Riseborough, true. Doug.
So, but like, obviously we can't talk about them. Freshmen, all new. Don't know what we're going to get with them. But just looking at that, my immediately thought just kind of goes to, that's not a lot of depth. I didn't see a ton out of Spalacy and Salquist to get me excited. Brand has really kind of floundered, I think. And Molinar is just, I don't know. He's like,
he had that one good game last year. Was against Western, I think.
I feel like a couple of goals. He's kind of like getting a C+ on a test you didn't really study for. So it's just kind of like, okay, that's kind of what I get for that. So, looking at the defense, I'm like, okay, this is stacked. This is nice. So, but so I'm definitely going to be looking to see, kind of getting the feet wet for, some of these third and fourth liners and how they're going to kind of react to Division I hockey. Now, obviously, first week in St. Thomas should be a sweep. Then a week off, so hopefully they'll get some reps, some practice, and then kind of come out hot against Wisconsin, because as far as pairwise conversions and comparisons, I mean that Wisconsin it's important to make sure that we win those Wisconsin games.
Yeah, and obviously important. These pairwise games, or these games against St. Thomas, aren't going to count in St. Cloud's pairwise unless they lose, most likely. And because the flaw in the math, at least with the RPI, is if you're playing a very bad team, that can actually drag down the team that beat them. It can drag down their RPI. So what they do is just they take those games out of the equation because they don't want wins to hurt a team. If you lose those games, however, they will stay in your mathematical calculation and really sink you. I mean, this could be if they lose one of these games, I don't care if it's the road game or the home game, that could be the difference between making the tournament and not making the tournament.
Which is obviously not what you want to say in the first week of the season,
right?
But yeah,
it's like college football. If a contender loses one of their terrible non-conference opponents, they're done for, like, if they're thinking about being a qualifier for the Final Four, and one of those early season losses can just kill you for the rest of the season. So it's not it's similar to that, and it's not exactly comparable, but similar to that here is that you can't lose unless you lose, and then St. Thomas is way better than anyone thinks they are, but I highly doubt that. So they just got to take care of business, and I'm imagining that he's going to try to get as many guys in the lineup as possible for these two games to see kind of what he's got. And using that month of October, going, as you mentioned, 4 series here before conference play sets out. Be nice to know what you got with guys like Rosborough. We're gonna stumble over that one all year. I'm guessing.
I think until he scores 5 points, I'm gonna still call him Rosborough. How about that?
Right. And Rogers and Wiley and the new defenseman Ingram, of course. I mean, it's going to be a nice opportunity for those guys because I think the schedule. I mean, you got the Mankato games, which I think are the toughest of those 8 that you're playing in the month of October. Then you got Bemidji, you got Wisconsin, you got St. Thomas. I think that's favorable from the perspective of being able to give guys opportunities. And so I think that's the biggest storyline over the first month. And hopefully that's the biggest storyline. If the storyline is what the hell is wrong with this team because they lost to St. Thomas, the tone of this podcast is going to shift.
It's going to get dark.
It might shift a little into that anti-Twins kind of rhetoric that I was mentioning earlier. Not that I'm going to root against the Huskies, but I have a history of doing so with my teams, so to speak. So let's hope it doesn't get there. But I have confidence that they will not do that this weekend.
So last year, like I said, 12-2, then 2-0. What's kind of your prediction for this for this series here? Do you think it's going to be another one of the same, a tight game and a blowout, or 2 fairly convincing wins for the Huskies? What do you want to see? What do you think you'll see? Do you have any thoughts on?
I think last year, if I can remember last year, I did say like one's going to be a boat race, one's going to be tight, which is what happened. Maybe I'll do the same thing there. I don't. Let's say like 5-2, 7-1, something like that. I don't. 12-2 seems greedy,
aggressive.
I
mean, great. I mean, they've got a tier 3 goalie, so who knows, really?
I wouldn't think he's playing. I bet it's going to be the other 2. I would assume that guy's going to be like emergency backup for them this season. But again, maybe I'm wrong. 12-2 seems aggressive, and you have the early start time. That's going to throw off their schedules.
It's going to throw off the schedules, and when you eat, and when you go to bed the night before, everything's going to go haywire.
Yep. So they might only get 7.
Yeah, and so here's just kind of what I'm thinking. It's like I just want 2 solid victories. I don't want any questions of how this team played cohesively. Like questions about certain players, yeah, I'm going to have that. But I want, a pair of 5-2 wins, 4-1, 4-0, something along those lines. If anything goes, if we do have a situation where it does end up where we even tie or whatnot, it's going to bring a lot of questions to see where this, what's going to happen for the rest of the season.
Yeah, first weeks of the year are always tough. I mean, not only we don't really know much about St. Thomas, and we have question marks about St. Cloud. And every year, it's like there's always going to be a new batch of players that we haven't seen their names, on a roster and stat line that we've read, but they're not really fully fleshed human beings until we see them in action. And so there's intrigue there and excitement naturally seeing crop of players. And I'm going to try to have fun and hopefully see some good things. I just don't want to have to come out here on October 4th, whatever it is that we'll record the next podcast, and sound the alarm bell.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. And I don't think 2 wins will sound the alarm bells, even if one of those wins is like a 2-0 thing, like last year. If they win the games, that's I can chalk that up to early season incohesiveness, lack of chemistry with players, blah blah blah. I'd rather have them lay an egg, Thomas, win playing your C- game, rather than even Wisconsin, who you might not be able to get away with even playing by playing C-. So hopefully it'll be a good start season for them. One that, it's not going to be without mistakes. They're probably going to give up a goal or 2 or 3. But let's just keep it in perspective here. Get the job done. We can nitpick, and we will. But
it's our specialty.
Let's just hope that it's, in the ideal world, it's 12-2 every game, but
we're not going to go 7 for 10 on the power play again. Is kind of what I'm hearing.
That's a high bar to set. Clear, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's so Flow Sports will have the games, or not the games, but Saturday's game, since this is a home and home. So Saturday's game is at St. Thomas. Sunday's game is at the Herb. And as long as you pay after the 28th, then you'll also get the Bemidji game. Make sure that you pick the monthly subscription. If you pick the annual subscription, it does advertise as $12.50 a month, but that's paid annually, so you'll get hit with the with all of it at once. So
right.
just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and you get the 2 Husky games, and you get the rest of the CCHA teams if that rocks the boat at all. That's what I did last year to watch that first game. And with October it's largely non-conference games across the board, so there can be some interesting non-conference games between CCH teams. I believe also that Flow Sports covers Atlantic hockey games as well. So again, for whatever that's worth, you can check out, which I did last year. I watched like a Bentley game last year. So yeah, it's for a hockey fan, it's not the best deal, but so for a Huskies game, I'll be doing it.
And especially also because we're gonna have that off weekend, so you won't even have Husky hockey, so you can catch Michigan Tech against Ferris State.
Oh, they're actually playing conference games already, right off the bat.
Yeah.
Oh, Ferris Effin State.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it's listed here on CHN as a non-conference game.
Sometimes they've done that where they'll play conference teams as non-conference teams. I know that's happened rarely in the past, but so it's possible. It could be
Arizona State against Bemidji State. So you got some games on the off weekend too.
I think you got because the Gophers play Mankato. Not sure if that's that weekend or actually when Husky will play the Badgers, but that's a game that.
Oh nope, that would be the off weekend.
Oh, it is.
The 8th is when they'll play at in Mankato.
Yeah, that'd be a decent.
So,
I mean, I'm curious about the Gophers. Touch on nationwide later on in the show, but I think that'd be a good early season show. So yeah.
There's a lot of hype right now, kind of between both teams. Which Minnesota State, that kind of surprises me, considering obviously who they lost, but
Oh, and I wanted to bring this up. The Gopher football team is on a nice little run to start the season. Mm-hmm. And you got to love it, Gopher hockey fans, whenever St. Cloud beats them. What do we hear? Oh, it's just these old-timer St. Cloud guys, 26-year-olds that are playing for St. Cloud. It's so unfair because we're playing, we got the 18-year-old chippers, which is the way it should be. That sort of stuff.
But
that'll
trot
happen,
out
right?
your 6-year senior
7th-year quarterback. They're the oldest team. Like, their offensive line is like older than certain NFL teams, and so the Gopher football team is really making hay with the old players theory. And so when the Huskies beat the Gophers in one of those two games that they play in January, you can have a response ready with, how's Tanner Morgan being 40 years old? He works pretty well in the Big Ten as a quarterback at 40, doesn't he? Get that one.
He just
tuned up.
looks like an insurance salesman, doesn't he?
That's what happens with the age, you know.
Yeah.
When the hair starts going, and that's the middle age is rough on some people. So I did want to throw that one out there for our season preview.
That's a good point. I haven't thought about that, but because usually any of those insults, they don't really, they don't hold water, so I don't really care. But that's a good comeback when we eventually hear that on the Twitter. So.
Yeah, please, somebody bring that up. It's only. Oh, I'm sure they'll trot it out when they lose to Mankato. So and the Gophers football will still be like in the middle of their run here. So maybe it'll.
Yeah, well, they don't play anybody decent until Penn State, and that's the only decent squad on their team on their whole schedule. Wisconsin's bad this year. Iowa's atrocious.
I still have
Nebraska's
skepticism. Yeah, Nebraska's terrible. But the Iowa and Wisconsin games, I'm still holding out hope as far as like they just don't. Iowa especially just can't beat them, and maybe they can lose a game there. But this is not a Gopher football podcast. We should perhaps move on to what NCHC.
NCHC. Let's get at it. So obviously our rock solid predictions, because we're so good at it. We'll go ahead and just look around the conference. We're not going to go in depth to all of the teams and whatnot. Obviously our shows are kind of longer than they should be at times, so we'll try to keep it short and just maybe a little blurb about each team, or some teams like Miami will just kind of breeze by because who cares. So yeah, kind of what I was thinking. Let me know what you're thinking. If you want to go top to bottom up. I always kind of like going 8 and then going up to 1. If that works, and then we can kind of talk.
I think that's a good way to start, because for me, the first team that I penciled in was my 8th place team, Miami.
Miami is your okay.
It was the easiest pick as far as I just can't see them being anywhere other than 8th place. How about you?
I think it might be Omaha.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I thought this one is. I thought we were going to be we discussed this before the show. I thought we were going to be so kind of overlapping in our predictions. So please, go right ahead. You have the floor, sir.
Oh, geez, I'm already going into it, which kind of. It's kind of like I had my listings, and then I was looking around, and I saw Siski also had Omaha at 8. So now it feels like I'm just copying Siski or whatnot. But I
should mention you are the resident Omaha fan on the podcast, so this surprises me.
I know, but I just think the big thing that it comes down to is they now I don't see them having a lot of people who can score, and they have a big goalie question mark. And I think that's just a recipe for disaster. As far as like St. Cloud goes, we still have players who can score. I just don't know where their scoring is going to come from. And I don't think they're nearly going to be deep enough. They got a couple of good guys on defense, but I mean, that goalie situation, when they did win, when they did surprise, I felt like they got really good goaltending that kind of stood on their head, and I just don't see that this season.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest, maybe the biggest talking point in all of the conference is goaltending issues, or goaltending question marks, let's say, because I think most teams have them. in
Yes.
the conference. North Dakota's bringing in a transfer goalie, the Ritter from Michigan State.
Shocker.
Um,
That's what they do.
But and on paper, he was a guy that I wanted the Huskies to go after. But they seemingly won the goalie transfer game last year with Driscoll, and that kind of turned out to be a bit of a dud. I know he picked it up towards the end of the season, but I think was underwhelming. And you have St. Cloud, as we've discussed many times. Duluth, it's been their strength for the last half decade in net, and they're they got Stay-Skull, but no Fanti coming back, and that's a question mark for them. Western Michigan, Brandon Bussey leaves, and they pick up Wisconsin's trash with Cameron Rowe, who the Huskies got to know very well in their sweep last year. Pulled them, I believe, in one of the games, I think he started both games, and I believe he did not last one of them. Fact check me on that if you'd like. CC has a highly touted prospect coming in, Caden Barrico, played with the National Team Development Program, and he was the World Juniors goalie. I see that CC, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but CC is kind of picked as a bit of a surprising team, or a team that could surprise people this year. And I think that's largely based on not only in Barrico, but they have a couple of other, kind of highly touted recruits. Chris Matt, sort of that's his bread and butter, as being a recruiter. I look at Barrico's stats though, and he doesn't like put up great numbers. He hasn't in the past. I know he's been a young goalie at each level that he's played at, but he's playing he's a young guy in an older league now, so it's not going to be too much different than what his experience with the USCHO was, which was a sub 900 save percentage goaltender. So, and then Miami, as they've got plenty of issues as it is, even without that. So, goaltending issues is sort of going to be, I think, the biggest storyline to play out this year. And Denver, being the team that sort of is coming in with a veteran goalie, and one that just won a national title to boot in Magnus Krona, I think that gives them a leg up, at least in my estimation. We can get to them again later in the show, but most of the teams now in the conference coming into the season have a question mark at goaltender, and I think that's the biggest, like I said, storyline to play out as we go through the season.
So it's, when I looked at that, you kind of look at tiers, in my opinion, and with the bottom, I would say 3 for the NCHC. I do go with Omaha last, and then I have Miami above them. So I guess I don't know what your 7th team is. I don't know if that's CC or if that is Omaha.
I had CC at 7, Omaha at 6.
Yeah. And that's kind of the consensus of those are the bottom 3. And it wouldn't really surprise me what order they're going to be in, but I have them as Omaha last, Miami, and then CC.
Okay. Yeah, it's weird for me to play the Omaha fan of this podcast, but I guess and yeah, it might turn out that way the more that I think about it. I mean, Miami, as we just mentioned, goaltenders, Ludwig Pearson is still there. The preseason goaltender of the year last year for the NCHC, not picked as the preseason goaltender of the year this year. As a guy that put up a .925 save percentage in the COVID year, and I think that was the reason that he had some hype coming into last year. Fell back a bit, and the St. Cloud weekend did nothing to help his numbers last year. Still put up an .894 save percentage, which I would almost consider kind of high. I would have guessed it was lower based on a couple of those weekends, but I guess he sees a ton of shots, and so yeah. The more that you're saying this, it's not, and who is Omaha's goalie even going to be? Like I said, the Imberico kid for CC has some hype coming in, and he did play well in the World Juniors up until that medal round game. He didn't play all that well. And I guess between you bringing in a high-end recruit versus Omaha, who lost their 2 goalies from last year, Roden goes over to Providence, and Seville turns pro. And so, yeah, I don't even know what their goaltender situation is, frankly, if they checking it now. Bringing in three recruits, and so no transfers out of any of these. So a huge question mark there as far as who's going to emerge from a goaltending tandem here. Yeah, it's very possible that Omaha could lose out. I guess from my perspective, Miami's got to show me a little bit of competence, which they have not shown in quite some time. And the same with CC, although I think they're in a little bit better hands. The way that the direction of the program is heading, I think, is rosier than the other two. So maybe you're talking me into flip-flopping Omaha and CC. When I did see the NCHC, I believe the coaches' preseason poll, they had CC at 6 and Omaha at 7, which surprised me a little because I had it flipped around, and I was wondering if that had more to do with CC being, people being high on CC or people being low on Omaha. And I guess you could make an argument for each. Yeah, I guess the more you talk about, because Taylor Ward is gone for Omaha, he's their stud scorer from last year. Yeah, they don't
Chase Primo had a solid season and was injured. I mean, so you got to factor that into it. But
right. Yeah, so I mean, they've had some guys, Weiss, Abate. They've had some guys that I know have played well against the Huskies in the past, and remembering those names.
It's going to be. Their scoring is really going to come down to, in my opinion, Cameron Berg, who, as a freshman, played pretty well. And I think after him, it just falls off really quickly. And combine that, like I said, goaltending is a big question mark for them. That's where I kind of ended up with Omaha. Miami, I think, is just listless. There's nothing there to get excited about. And Colorado College, I guess, is just a fraction better than Miami because they have better jerseys, I guess. I don't I'm showing my, I didn't go really deep in depth to them because it's just, I don't think they're going to be that big of a thought here throughout the season. So that's just kind of what I feel about those three.
I think we'll learn more about Mayotte this season because, like I said, this goaltender has some hype to him, and they brought in a couple of forwards as well that have some hype to them as well. And that is Mayotte's claim to fame at this point, being at Michigan and a couple of other programs, Providence. His MO or his trademark was solid recruiting. That does not always translate to success as a head coach. It's a couple of different skill sets there that overlap, but they're not perfectly, replaceable or transitive, I think you should say. If he can turn that team into a 500 team, and maybe competing for home ice, I'll be more of a believer. But it's kind of what I said about Omaha and Miami, or Miami at least. You got to prove it first for me to sort of get my initial skepticism aside. So, yeah, I don't think any of these three teams are necessarily good teams. I would be surprised if any were serious threats to make the tournament this year, the NCAA tournament. But it doesn't mean that they're not without...
Or the Frozen Face-Off.
Or the Frozen Face-Off, especially Miami, Miami especially, but Omaha too, who's never made it to the Frozen Face-Off. So...
They haven't made... I want to say it's not like since, they haven't made a conference semifinal since 04, I think.
I thought it was 05.
05?
It's one of those 2 years. But the neutral site phase of a conference tournament, and not counting the Grand Forks bubble one from a couple of years ago because everybody made it there. But that was when they were in the CCHA. So that was actually 3 conferences ago when they were playing the CCHA tournament at the semis and finals at the Joe Louis Arena.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last time. And so it's and I know that doesn't mean anything necessarily to as far as how they're going to perform on the ice this year. It's ancient history, but it's just that monkey off the back. It's like the Twins in the playoffs. Everyone's going to be skeptical until the monkey's off the back. And so,
yep.
But yeah, as you're saying, and as we're talking about it now, less and less likely I think that's going to happen this year. So that playoff drought, at least the conference playoff drought, might be extended this year. Probably a good chance to be extended this year for Omaha.
Exactly. So, 5. Who you got at 5?
I got Western Michigan.
Yep, I got Western Michigan too.
You're thinking about tiers. Is this middle tier? Well, I'll put it this way: is this middle tier comprised of 2 teams or 3 teams? Or what? How many teams do you think comprise the middle ground?
I think it's comprised of 2.
I would tend to agree.
Okay, because I'm really curious here where you're going to put Duluth, but we'll get to that. But kind of where you put the break at the tiers. How I'm looking at this is just kind of St. Cloud State and Western kind of in the same tier. And, judging by, our lack of success in Kalamazoo also doesn't help as well. Kind of keeps
Huskies don't play. The Huskies don't need to go to Kalamazoo this year.
Huge win. Huge bonus that we only play them here.
So I guess we're spoiling here that both of our number 4 team is the Huskies.
I mean, yeah, that I guess I just
mine.
Assumed that was, but yes, that is mine as well. So
yeah, and I would put between the two, I agree about the tiers thing. Although I think this middle tier is the one with the most sort of there's more space in between these teams. I would tend to give the Huskies a little bit more of an edge than the Broncos. More significant of a gap between them than there is between 6 and 7. And 7 and 8, let's say. I think those bottom 3 teams, you could really sort of jumble them together. Although, whereas I see it as St. Cloud is being a step ahead of Western. Although I still would put them in a similar tier, if that makes any sense. And maybe I'm incorrect here. So quickly do I forget. This was a number 1 overall seed last year in Western Michigan. And they did lose a lot. We mentioned Bussey is gone, and I was not impressed with Cameron Rowe from Wisconsin last year. He had a good year in the COVID year when Wisconsin was good, but crashed back down to earth last year, and now he's a guy that's kind of looking to prove it again. I think moving on to a tougher league in the NCHC is going to be a tough adjustment for him, frankly. And that's my biggest question mark for Western, and losing a lot of offense as well. And they were a very kind of older team, talking about grandpas, that Josh Passelt sort of embodied that for Western. He had been around he did the 8-year tour seemingly at Western Michigan. And, guys like that are gone. Not that he was, the main cog in their offense, but losing some offense, this Furschweiler is kind of a sexy, coach right now, and I think his recruiting class was prized, and they're not going to get the guys that Michigan is going to get, for instance. They're not going to get the top end guys, but he impressed me with his coaching style. Seems like a guy that players like playing for, but he's not a guy that gives free passes either. He strikes just from an outsider's perspective, someone watching from 30,000 feet, he seems like a guy that gets the most out of his players. And So the trust factor, with Mayotte being a little bit of an unknown still at CC, Furschweiler 1 year in, and he knocked that first year out of the park. Getting Western Michigan off the monkey off their back. Never had won an NCAA tournament game until last year. Number 1 overall seed, and they beat Northeastern in the regional.
And also, not to mention, started the whole downfall for Mel Pearson. Maybe not started, but
was involved in.
Well, yeah, was involved in the kicking out of Mel Pearson. So
yes, played a hand in that. And yeah, though Western Michigan will mean something beyond what the Broncos are. They have a specific. It's like Holy Cross. Saying Holy Cross to a Gopher fan, saying Western Michigan to a Michigan fan is that's going to have a little bit of staying power, I think, as far as bits go. So yeah, and I thought their best player last year, skater wise, was Adder, Ronnie Adder from the back end. He's gone to the NHL. So they have some question marks too, and that's why I have them in the bottom half of the conference. This isn't a team that necessarily has shown an ability to reload to the extent that a North Dakota or a Denver can. That's a high bar to clear, especially for a program like Western. Hasn't had the biggest success historically, but I like the coach. I trust that he knows what he's doing as far as building the team, and I think they do have enough gas left carrying over from last year to be clearly, at least at the beginning of the year, clearly ahead of that bottom tier that we mentioned. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about Western.
Yeah, I think it's anytime CC Miami or Omaha is going to get a win above them, it's going to be a shock. If St. Cloud or Michigan State gets a win, it wouldn't really raise an eyebrow for me, but I can see us too stumbling against, one of those lower teams as well. If we play down to that or if Western Michigan does. So that's why I kind of have them in that middle tier. Cause they've got a few more weapons, than, a lot of those teams in that lower tier, but I think they just also have too many question marks that I still think that they're going to be kind of on that bottom half of the conference.
Yeah, and if we can bring in, we've said a lot about St. Cloud, but them being 4th place here, if you want, is there anything you want to say as far as why you're putting them there exactly in this, in this field, in this group of teams, and are we being homer by putting them at 4? We've talked about the question marks that this team has too, namely in goaltending and scoring depth. So is 4th place sort of generous perhaps for this team? I don't think so. I think I don't think so either. Here. Yeah. I don't think so either. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if we finish in 5th. If we finish in 6th, I'm going to be shocked. 6th or lower. I think I'd go with that. I agree with that.
Now, elephant in the room is obviously our goaltending situation. We cannot have Castor, or at least his performance against Quinnipiac. We cannot have that throughout the whole season, because that's, a league like the NCHC is just going to rip that up. So it's going to be a tough, I think if we get a modest question mark answered there, so if it's, it doesn't have to be like an exclamation point, but if it's a period, it's like, okay, that is, here we got a good rhythm, something like, maybe even a high 2, low 3 goals against with a save percentage of a 9-1. That I think that would be good enough, I think, for us to finish in 4th. Because I think we also are going to have the defense. I think we're going to play a little bit faster than some of those teams. And I think we're going to, again, playing Western Michigan only at home and not going there, I think is also going to be a big help. So.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. So for for third place. We move on.
Yep. Move on.
Well,
Who you got?
I got Duluth.
I got Denver.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, well that's good. It's I like that we're not the same for a lot of these.
Yep.
I'm wondering who you got for one now.
I got Denver mostly because of now. First off, 1, 2, and 3 to me fairly interchangeable. The only reason I would say Duluth is not number 1 is just historically they've never finished number 1 in regular season. They've never won a regular season title. I don't think.
No, you're correct.
So just historically, but
And
you know, for Denver is kind of the main thing is I just felt like that's a lot of scoring they lost, and obviously, yes, they can reload and they have that ability and whatnot, but I think it's going to be kind of a little bit of a dip, a little bit of a step back, not a huge step back. I mean, they're still going to be, I think, a high 2 seed going into the national tournament, but I do feel like it's going to be really close in this 3-horse race. I think they're just going to fall a little bit beneath it.
Yeah, I would say in the tier, I think I would agree that these 3 teams are in the top tier, although I could make an argument for being that middle as well. The best team of I think the Denver and Minnesota are clearly sort of last Duluth notch below them. But all 3 teams are good. All 3 teams are going. And I had Denver number 1. I guess I'm giving him national champ benefit of the doubt there. I'm not a huge.
I mean, it's hard not to.
Right. I'm not a huge fan of Corona, but
I'm not. I've never actually really been a big fan of Corona.
But I think he gives you basically an average goal, and there's this question marks with a lot of other teams, even question mark with Duluth and Minnesota up there at the top, where I'm not sure if I'm not confident they're gonna have a proven quantity net, even though, like I said, Corona's not a guy that he's not gonna win the brick for you. And I like their defensemen, especially Barron, Benning, the B boys, the Van Buren boys at the back end. You don't want to mess with them, and so I think they got an elite sort of top defensive core, and I do have we have the track record with Denver that they can load, and they still got guys like Nate, but their last year. I think they can find the scoring. I don't think that's an issue. So they're of these 3 teams, they're the ones. Denver is the one lead question, and just the proven ability that national title last year. North Dakota, I think, is also very good too, and I would not be shocked if they win. For that to happen, De Ritter is gonna prove himself as a top-notch goaltender, which I think is possible. Certainly is possible. And they're sort of high-end guys that are coming in. Dylan James probably headlining that group of freshmen coming in. Got a ton of hype. Put up like a 90-point season at the USHL. Expecting a lot from him. Similar with Duluth, and we mentioned this when we're talking about the NHL draft. Isaac Howard, the highest drafted NCHC player going to Duluth, be a Bulldog this year. That's a bit of a change for Duluth as far as we're so used to goaltending defense. The headline show there, and now they got a sexy, flashy dresser scorer in the stable there. And so
they've actually been hitting a lot of top recruits over the past. So I have them as my number 2. I have North Dakota number 1, as much as I hate them. But with Duluth, I think they're always going to be sound defensively. I think they're always going to have an shockingly good goaltending core. Like, it feels like that's just a comment no matter what they do back there. And that maybe is a little bit of their style, but at the same time, I think now they're going to have more pieces to open up the ice. And I think a lot of those games are going to be maybe even a little bit more exciting to watch. And I think they are going to really contend for a Penrose. So, with North Dakota, I just think they've got such a strong core coming back, and they've got such potent players at every position that I think they're just going to be the deepest team. I think they're going to be the toughest team to play night in, night out. And I think they're going to need average goaltending, I think. And I think everything's going to fall in line for them. So that's kind of who I have as the top team.
Yeah, so I don't know if I made it clear. Number 1, Duluth, 2, Dakota, or 3. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Number 1, Denver. Number 2, Duluth. God. Erase all this, please. Number 1, God, I did it again. They all start with D. That's what's making it trip up. But Denver,
Okay.
North Dakota, Minnesota, Duluth. That's my
There you go.
But
there you go.
I agree with the sort of.
But you're thinking Duluth might drop down into that second tier. And I say drop down because this is preseason predictions, for crying out loud. So like drop down isn't even a real thing right now.
I would still, I would think it's a safe bet that all 3 against the Blaze. So when I'm saying dropping down to second tier, I'll say it. I'm gonna pick St. Cloud to make the Blaze. So in that second tier, I'm putting tournament teams in that second tier. So it's not like I'm dismissing a team to be in the second tier.
Well, do you want to know my bold take?
Go ahead.
I think NCHC is only getting 3 in, and I think I think we're only getting 3 in, and I think St. Cloud is not going to make the tournament. If I were to look at this roster right now and see everything, now that hurts me to say it, but I think this is maybe it's because I just don't see anyone really from that previous freshman class stepping up. Obviously, other than our defense, other than Lukey and Peart to a little bit of a lesser extent, but none of the freshman forwards are giving me a lot of hype, or previous freshmen, now sophomores, giving me a lot of hype. So I just don't think we've got the weapons that we've had in years past, and I think we're going to have too many games where we spin our wheels and we're just going to be on the cusp, and we're going to be nail-biting right towards the end, but I think we're going to come up a little bit short.
I think that's valid. I think that's fair. I don't think I'm saying St. Cloud. If they get in, it's going to be something like it was this past year, where it's 3 seed, and you might have to sweat it out in the conference playoffs just to, like, you're not going to go into the conference tournament with a clinched berth in the NCAA. It's going to be one of those kind of, which is for most teams, I suppose. Not everybody has that luxury to kind of coast into the tournament. And I think a factor too is schedule when it comes to the Huskies. They got a tough schedule in that we're talking about Western Michigan and Omaha being the 2 teams that they only played 1 series against each, and we're both picking those teams as bottom half of the league teams. Duluth only plays North Dakota once this year, and so they get a bit of an easier break, or easier schedule in that regard, just missing North Dakota. But St. Cloud's got to play those top 3 teams 2 series each. Western Michigan, they only play Denver once, and then obviously only play the Huskies once. So the teams that are in that middle, the middle tier for me, or middle pack, 3, 4, 5. St. Cloud has the toughest schedule of those 3, and so that might play a factor.
Sure.
When what it was this last year, you flip 1 win in a lot, between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 and 4 and 5, then it all scrambles the playoff positioning for everyone. So it'll come down to one win or a tie, or God forbid overtime procedures. Don't tell that you got to get that squared away with Jim Rich. If
Jim Rich, we're gonna. Yeah.
But it's gonna be tight. I think that the top 5 teams, there's not gonna be it's not gonna be a 5 race, but I'm saying those are all gonna be, I think, quality teams. And in between the two, first, second and third and fourth, there's going to be races all the way down to the wire, and I think that's going to make it fun. I don't think there's a clear. It might be weird to say it with the defending national champion coming out of this, but I don't think that there's a clear favorite for this conference. My biggest sort of wrestling with standings wise, I think, was between 1 and 2, because I was going between Denver and North Dakota. I could see, I would not be shocked to see Duluth sneak in there either. So it should be a fun season. I'm looking forward to it. I think there's now a shortage of just question marks and intrigue, and I think that makes it fun. I don't want just one team or 2 teams dominate and the rest is trying to catch up. I think there's a legitimate chance for a number of teams to compete for an NCAA berth, and said there's that lower tier. We would be surprised if any of those 3 teams made NCAA tournament. But other than that, I think those other 5 teams are certainly going to compete, and good chance for 4 or 5 of them to make a tournament. Yeah, so excited for it.
Yeah, and I that Denver one, obviously, I mean, the poll had that at their number 1 team. Obviously, a lot of that being the championship hangover. But also the preseason all-conference team that Cronolo was on. But there were 4 Denver players on that, including both defensemen. So, maybe I'm going to look really dumb by the end of the year.
And was Krona the goaltender?
Yes.
Pick? Kind of conventional. You're not going to, I guess Pearson is back. So you could pick him again. But don't.
Oh, man. I think that was one of my favorite of this edition of our podcast moments, is when we talked about Pearson. and that reaction of what the heck is he doing on this list. But
I thought we were both, you're talking like preseason last year.
Yeah.
Fun. I know we came back after the season ended, went back. We had some giggles because kind of forgot about that. But yeah, Pearson, that one did not age well.
So here we are across some, just over the hour. So we can kind of go a couple different ways here, but where do you want to go to? Maybe a couple different conferences? You just want to just talk about the poll that came out? I don't really have much to say about a lot of other conferences, but we can definitely kind of spin our wheels. Kind of what kind of storylines are you interested in kind of going forward? Where do you want to go from here? Pretty much what I want to say.
Well, looking at the preseason USCHO, first USCHO poll of the season, which
that's always my favorite.
Howler.
And really the only time I look at this poll, because it always is just so many question marks. It's like, why is that the consensus, and why were they put there?
And most of it's a picture of college hockey the day after Frozen Four. Yeah, a little bit has changed, but I mean, like top 4 in let's say the top 6: Denver, Minnesota, Minnesota State, North Dakota, Minnesota, Duluth, Michigan. You got all 4 of your Frozen Four teams in there, and then you got 2 of the teams that, Quinnipiac 2 at 7. So that was another regional finalist along with North Dakota, Duluth. And Northeastern, they were in the tournament. Who's the other? Or Western Michigan would have been the other semifinal. But this is essentially looking at the standings last year in the tournament last year. And then also sort of, so my question was, which of these 20 teams, I want to look on the USCHO poll, which of these 20 teams are we going to look back at the end of the season and say, wow, that will pay off? Or if there's a team that's not listed that is going to surprise. See, my thing is, with these polls, Wisconsin was the team for years, which didn't matter how many single-digit win seasons Mike Eves had there at the end. Damn well, Pennsylvania.
They were going to be top 10.
Be about 11th in the USCHO poll, roughly there. And the voters have wisened up to that. Wisconsin unranked start the season, although they got 15 votes. Kind of funny.
Right next to Omaha.
Right next to Omaha. And above Colgate. And so, but the team that's kind of placed them for that, I think, is Boston.
That's the one that jumped out to me at 12. Is what is Boston doing there?
But why? It's because they're the conventional or the traditional power. Always has a fair amount of hype that goes into them. They're a sexy school that's on the rebound. They played okay last year. They had a run there in the middle. They started out poorly and then had a run, then sort of tailed off at the end of the year and not make the tournament. But they're there at number 12. I think that is kind of the one that does scream out the most as far as probably overrated to be in the preseason polls probably. But any of these other teams, I mean, again, not many surprises going down the list here at Quinnipiac at 7, Northeastern at 8, Notre Dame, UMass, Harvard, BU, St. Cloud at 13, go Huskies, woo. Western Michigan at 14, Providence, Ohio State, UMass Lowell, Clarkson, Cornell, and Michigan Tech rounding out the top 20. And again, the flaw of this poll is only 16 teams make the tournament, so I don't even know why they go to 20. One of the hits I have with this poll. But of these 20 teams, we mentioned the U being kind of overrated. So we have the 20 teams. Is there a team that not mentioned here that you think could make some noise? Make the tournament. I'm sure if we can go back and look, it's happened like every year. A team that doesn't start the season in the USCHO poll makes the tournament. I bet that's more often.
Ooh, that's not a bad idea. Maybe we can take a quick peek at that. The one that kind of, I guess there's, one that stands out to me for the others receiving votes is Northern Michigan, actually.
Yeah. They surprised me too because they were ranked 2 in the CCHA preseason and got a couple of first place votes. And I was surprised by that because I'm like, there's something I'm missing here as far as they bring in some studs. That did surprise me, but maybe there's something with Patolny that working. I would be very shocked if a team other than Cato in the CCHA. I'll put it that way. But yeah, maybe that for a dark horse pick, I think that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my main one. Big Ten is always kind of a flip of the coin, in my opinion. And not necessarily when it comes to Michigan and Minnesota, but I always think usually there's one other team that's kind of in the mix. For a while it was Penn State that was in there. Sometimes it can be Wisconsin. Might have a good year or so.
Ohio State's had some decent years recently.
Yeah. So it's so looking, I could see Penn State kind of making a run there in that conference as well. And then who knows who's gonna drop? Obviously Boston University is kind of the easy pick there. I mean Michigan, their administration and head coach is kind of in turmoil, so who knows if that kind of affects them and drops everything off quite a bit. But also, I don't really know what's going on with Mankato. Minnesota State is listed there, three first place votes as well, and they lost quite a bit, and they're probably are going to win the CCHA, but I think a lot of recency bias is going into that third place right there. So, which I guess this is all this poll is. So,
right, and I guess I don't see anyone in that conference really unseat them, and maybe the coaches know more about Northern Michigan. Obviously, they know more about Northern Michigan than I do, but just the way that they are set up, it's hard for me. Although, and Mankato has done this thing in the last few years where they know, because the CCHA doesn't give them a ton of benefit from a strength of schedule standpoint, they have been scheduling a tough non-conference slate. We mentioned playing Gophers in a home and home next week or 2 weeks from now, playing St. Cloud in a home and home. Weekend after that, I believe. Well, no, they got Duluth at home following the Gopher series, and then they go to St. Cloud. I mean, those are three good teams. I mean, I think we can say that. Plus, they're kind of in-state rivals. That's a good non-conference slate, and then they go down to Arizona State, which I think is actually going to be somewhat of a intriguing. I'm kind of interested to check out Arizona State this year. New arena, Don Mullet Arena in Tempe. And the best thing about this, he was named after a sugar daddy that they had that donated a lot of the money. That seems to be like a new trend now, because that's what CC did too. Name their arena after a rich guy that comped them a bunch of money. Best thing though, I'm looking forward to going to Mullet Arena, because I've heard they got like in the rear part of the building, they got like tent situation, party sort of area, that's where the beer is served and whatnot. So what they can say is, Mullet Arena, it's business in the front, party in the
back. Nice.
I thought about that like 2 weeks ago, and that's been on ice for a couple of weeks just for me to use that
sitting on it.
Just sitting on it, but
nice.
But yeah, so I mean, Minnesota State, like they could, if they take care of their conference schedule and they split the teams, the good parts of their non-conference schedule, they're probably going to be a 1 seeding. So, and you might be right as far as McKay leaving and have an unknown and goaltender, and who knows who's going to score for him. I get all that. I've generally been down on Mankato in the past, relative national coverage perception of them, but I just think they're well positioned in the league, and they're clearly better than anyone else in that league, and so I would expect them to be there at the end. But that's a decent one where, yeah, 3 might be a little high.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I could definitely see them running the table too in the conference.
I looked at last preseason poll. So we can go last season. Who started off number 1? UMass.
But yeah,
made the
that's
tournament.
Probably got to be like every year, like the previous champ.
St. Cloud made the tournament. Michigan made the tournament.
St. Cloud was number 2 to start out last season.
Yep. I mean,
looking at it now. Oh yeah, because he had the Denver stray number 1 vote at 13 there, Schlossman.
Yeah, yep, exactly. But the first one out, 7, Boston College.
Which that fits into the traditional power that we're gonna overrate.
Yep. And then number 10, Boston University was,
and number
and then
11
Wisconsin. Flipping around the other side, I only looked at this quickly, but the one that stood out to me Western Michigan was in other receiving votes, and they were a 1 seed, right?
Yes, they were the number 4 overall seed.
And then Michigan Tech, I believe, was in the tournament last year. They played against Duluth, I want to say.
Yep.
Because I think
there were
Biddy and
votes,
Bethlehem were. Yep. So.
Yeah, I wonder if there's probably been a seasons where like no one has been receiving votes and then made the tournament. Again, we're setting up research projects that we should do fly, but I bet that's happened and not.
Here, listen to 15 minutes of dead air quick while I look this up.
But yes, the USCHO poll, you gotta love it. The preseason show, gotta love it.
Number 11.
I forgot about that.
I did
But I
too.
suppose, I mean, they were coming off their one NCAA berth last week. So
they finally
they were back.
Everyone thought they were back, and I remember watching them against. Oh man, we took them to task for that series as well. We were when St. Cloud played Wisconsin, and Wisconsin just looked atrocious. So
yeah, I think that'll be a little bit different series this year, but we can wait to speculate on that.
That's true. So, all right. We did have one question from obviously our good friend Dan Jacobson, friend of the show. He just asked how many issues NCHC TV will have opening weekend. And
I'm gonna go. Well,
my first answer is all of them.
The answer would be yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I was gonna say if Omaha is at home.
That's actually probably the best answer.
But I'm not sure if they're at home. I gotta check out Omaha schedule. They are. Well, they got Mankato as an exhibition. That's on Saturday. But then they play Niagara. Yeah, again with Omaha, their cupcake non-conference schedule. Again, Niagara, Lake State, Alaska, Long Island, St. Lawrence. A couple of those are on the road this year. That's pretty easy.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, my go-to is you look at Omaha or you look at Miami.
Yeah.
Those I feel have the most trouble in the streams.
Now that Duluth is HD.
Yes.
That makes a big difference.
God, that used to. God, I remember their anchor would just defend it on Twitter about how expensive it was to go to HD, and it's like this. It's like we've had HD for 15 years now. Like, what are you doing?
Hey. So yeah, you think all that national title money, they don't pitch in for all the caddy. They would to cover a transition. But hey, it's done now.
That's the important part, right?
They're up to date now, so that's the important.
Well, I don't know about you, but as we were going and as we were getting talking and whatnot, I'm getting hype. Like, yeah. I know I said at the start of the show that the season kind of snuck up on me, and maybe it's the 3 kids that I have will kind of suck the life out of me a little bit. But as we were talking about the league and the teams and whatnot, I'm chomping. I'm ready to go. I know I predicted a St. Cloud State disappointment, but I'm still hyped for it. So I'm excited for the season to get going.
Likewise, and yeah, I feel being the optimist is a bit of a.
It's quite the role reversal.
It's a bit of an unknown situation.
Hey, we sweep Mankato. I'm going to be drinking the Kool-Aid. So.
You got a national title
right now?
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Season preview. Like, I haven't put any real thought. That just sprung into my head. So.
Oh, jeez. I'm going conference.
You're going.
God,
what?
it's gonna be Duluth, isn't it? God, that would suck. God, I don't even want to say that. I don't even want to say North Dakota either. Denver. Let's go Denver. They'll repeat.
I think you're sleeping on the Stonehill Skyhawks.
That's right.
You
Okay,
you
so
heard
they
it-
are
you
a
heard it here
team.
first. You heard
I-
it here first.
Literally, yes, first.
That Skyhawks name makes me think that they used to have like a Native American name. It sounds like one of those sort of like you replaced it with a vaguely like generic sounding bird. I'm skeptical about Stonehill. And yeah, not sure exactly if they're full blooded one yet. But yeah, so you're staying in
I like
house.
it.
You're
I'm
staying in
staying
house
in
and going with Denver to repeat.
You come at the king, you best not miss. And so far, every team has missed except for St. Cloud, or for UMass. So it's until somebody tells me that, or until some team shows me that they can challenge for an NCHC like crown of being the best conference or anything along those lines, I got to stick it to the best conference, and we are the best conference. So
Yeah,
that's why I'm picking a team from the NCHC.
I mean, that's a good pick. I mean, I picked number one in the conference, and I would agree that they're the best conference. And yeah, I still think that the West is the better half of the country. But it's like I almost want to pick a team out east just to be a contrarian. I'm just not sure. Like Quinnipiac, like I can't see. God, yeah, like the Hockey East. Really interested. It's like because I think that Boston University pick was overrated. Boston College was not rated to start the season, which is sort of telling as far as like what we mentioned from last year's poll. They're kind of like a team that is traditionally viewed as, well, it's Boston College, so they got to be there. So 8 Boston College, and for the USCHO voters to be down on BC, that must mean they're really down. So probably not them. I'll go Providence. I'm gonna go Providence. I'll go Providence.
All right, my East Coast team. Let's for some reason I thought of Maine, but I know that's gonna be a bad pick.
I would go for it,
but yeah, East Coast. It's like maybe Quinnipiac, but even that I think is not a good pick. I mean, they didn't impress me in the St. Cloud should have beat them. So, and in case you were wondering, yes, you are completely right. Their previous nickname was disrespectful to Native Americans.
Really?
Yeah.
I honest to God, I did not know that. Just the Skyhawks thing, which I just found out. It's like Red Hawks or Fighting Hawks. It's blank Hawks. That's what you go for.
That's just what you go to.
Template.
I guess credit to them is that they determined that back in 2002. So I guess you could say they're a little bit ahead on that. Although I guess when did Miami?
I was going to wonder that. I feel like it was even longer. Like
I think they were like very early,
like 70s or 80s.
Yeah,
I think like when Gwozdecki was coaching, I think they had already been Red Hawks for some time. I'm not positive about that, but maybe one of our many Miami fans chime in if there's any Miami fans left after the run that they've been on. You are
like
a Miami fan listening.
Fan.
Yeah. If you are a Miami fan listening, I hope you get a hug from somebody.
I hope somebody's doing welfare checks. I hope somebody is just every once in a while asking how you doing, if you're doing okay.
Yeah.
So, but
wouldn't it be wild? Maybe that's my Western pick this year. Miami is going to go to the title game.
Ah, yeah, there you go. I like it.
The Miami versus Providence.
Just a ratings gold mine right there. Them two with Bucci on the call.
Yeah, Melrose. He'll be stumbling over some names on that roster.
Woof. Well, that about does her. So we'll be back. Probably, every week here on out.
Yep. So we're back on the weekly schedule. There might be like Christmas break. We might take a week off because they don't play any games there. But basically from here until April, March, April. You'll be hearing us every week.
Yep. So it'll be a lot of that. So I'll have it probably have it out. I'll try to have it out Mondays or Tuesdays. House of the Dragon is in full swing right now. So I did have to call the audible. So we're going to be recording on Monday nights. So if you have questions,
that's the reason pushing.
Yes. Wife and I have date night Sunday nights. We're watching House of the Dragon. We are fully invested. I was skeptical with how Game of Thrones ended, and obviously George R.R. Martin won't finish the books because he wrote everyone into a corner and doesn't know how to get out of it. And but now coming back to it after the first episode, really, I was like, okay, I'm back in Westeros. I'm back. Like, I'm hype. And it's lived up for me. I'm absolutely loving it so far. So I'm excited to see.
Second time that you use the word hype as an adjective, which I like. I like that. I usually say hyped, but I like the singular there. That's good. I might have to steal that.
Yeah, it's a good word.
It's a good word.
Yeah, exactly. So, we just had episode 6. I think there's 10 episodes in the season. So, just a couple. Then, we've kind of fell into that routine where the Sunday podcasts have kind of worked
Sunday
the
recording.
best. Or the Sunday recording.
Release a day. But whatever. You'll get it Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, somewhere in that ballpark. I mean, you get what you pay for with us.
Exactly. If you want it sooner, give us money, and then we'll talk. So
that's right.
So, all right. Until next time, have a good one, everybody. Go Huskies! Woo!